All right, good afternoon, traders. Today is April 16th, 2025. My name is John Kerrigan. I am the lead instructor for BYOB Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody out in digital land, podcast land, cyber land. Thank you so much for following my content, finding the value in my content. Appreciate all of that. I want to thank all of the subscribers here in the room, all the trials. Appreciate that. Okay, I love that. I don't take that for granted. All right. So I try to provide content and smart trades to do every day. All right. So let's go take a look at the market. All right. Let's move this out of the way. Let's take a look at SPY on the 10. All right, let's look at it over here. 10-minute chart for SPY. Okay, so what did we have today? Gap down. Okay, notice a bearish gap down. The bulls did not fill it. All right, so the bears are in town. All right, the bears are in town. No bullish gap filled. All right, so we had a big move down. All right. We were up here at 537, so we opened up right here at about 531. That's a pretty good size drop, $6 for SPY. And you can see we're caught underneath the downtrend line right there. All right, so from the gate, we had a 10-minute downtrend into this area right here. Okay, then we double bottomed. All right, and I did not want to take the bullish trade up, but it lingered way too long. I saw the ascending tails down here on the 3-minute chart. All right, and we got 2 3-minute candle pop right there, and that's it. It was game over. All right, and then from there they started. I'm gonna move this over. Yeah, they started a machine trend to the downside, got back underneath VWAP. All right, so everything they just worked so hard to do, they just undid it. All right, so we made a lower high right here. It was a higher low, excuse me, it was a higher high than the open, but as far as this high goes, it was a lower high. All right, then we got a 10-minute downtrend. Take a peek at that on the underneath VWAP. All right, so here's the move down. Got a 10-minute downtrend under VWAP. A little shake, rattle, and roll during Mr. Powell's speech. And then you can see you had the red erases green, all right, situation, all right through there. Okay, so this is all the green. I'll box it off for you. Okay, so all of this is the green, right? From here, that low, up to there. All right, from that low up to there. Okay, so then we had red come in. All right, and we'll do the red. So red came in from up here and took us down to here. All right, red erases green entry, 10-minute downtrend under VWAP. All right, tradable event right there. 10-minute downtrend under VWAP. Love that. All right, right into 520, and then from the 520, well, I predicted a $2 to $3 bounce. Well, you can see we got a $6.50 bounce on our way back to VWAP back here. So big bounce right there off the 520. That's a psychological number, all right? 520, 550, 580. Then comes the whole round number, 600. Okay, so on the way down, it's going to be 520, 600, and 520, 500, 480, and 450. All right, that's on the downside. So there's SPY on the 10-minute chart. Got a 10-minute uptrend coming into the close. Let's take a look at the 2-hour chart. And got to take that off. 2-hour chart. All right, 2-hour chart, we have a 2-hour downtrend. See the 3 EMA? Right, that's the yellow line crossed under. All right, 3 EMA, 10-minute, 2-hour downtrend. All right, see the green dots? They're no longer going up. They're coming down. So now they turned red. Price is underneath it. So we got a 2-hour downtrend coming into the close. On the daily chart, all right, so we got a lower high and a lower low with a bearish gap down that didn't get filled. All right, and then price action, all right, is making lower highs and lower lows. We'll see where they are with the quad lines on it. Okay, so they finished in the lower third. All right, so guess what? We're back to bearish again. All right, so we're in a downtrend and we're back to bearish again. Okay, so there's SPY. All right, let me see if you want to see where we are. All right, I'll take the quad lines. I'll just take that off and take that off. Kind of clean it up a little bit. Zoom in and slide it over. All right, from the high to the low with the quad lines. Okay, quadrant 4, quadrant 3, quadrant 2, quadrant 1. We're in the lower third right here. And maybe not. All right, I'm going to call it, I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to say neutral. They're still neutral. All right, still neutral. They were in the lower third. Okay, right there. In that tail earlier, they were in the lower third. That's bearish. Okay, so there's SPY on the daily chart. Okay, we're making lower highs and lower lows, so we're still in a daily downtrend. On the weekly chart, all right, let's take a look at the weekly. Okay, on the weekly chart, you can see right here, price action. All right, this is the low. There's a low. We made a lower low. So we're in a weekly downtrend on the monthly chart. Okay, this will be the first low, the one that pokes through the 17. Okay, so we're not there yet on the monthly chart. Got a long ways to go. We got to get all the way down to 400 to negate the monthly uptrend. Okay, it can happen. All right, I just hope it doesn't happen tomorrow. All right, so monthly still in an uptrend, experiencing a monthly pullback. All right, big tail on that candle right there. All right, game plan. Let's take a look at the game plan. And here's the game plan. We opened up underneath the red erases green entry right there, 535.20. All we needed was a red candle to play to the downside. So we traded that down into there, okay, right into 529, which was the overnight low, according to some figures. Okay, that was the overnight low right there. All right, came back up, couldn't break the rubber band candle. All right, then we got crushed with a 10-minute downtrend under VWAP, and you can see where that went. All right, so there's SPY on the game plan. All right, we like 1 day till expiration Thursday options. That's because this Friday we're closed, and 9 days till expiration Friday options. Next Friday we're not closed. We like $5 to $10 out of the money. They're cheaper and they offer less risk, but you don't get the performance you would with a 0 DTE in the money. All right, you want the very best performing option. It's always going to be the 0 DTE in the money. Keep in mind the 0 DTE expires in 6.5 hours. All right, so you don't have much time and you need price to move. All right, if it consolidates for 4 hours, like sometimes it does, all right, all that theta is going to just grind away at your risk. Okay, so you need a day that's going to be moving, not a consolidation day. All right, if you're going to play the high risk ones with the best performance. So we don't trade those, all right, because you get caught in a consolidation day. All right, it's just going to grind away at the theta and melt it away. Okay, so there was a green erases red event up here, 542.70. You can see we didn't even touch it. We didn't even get close to the pivot, which was 539.30. All right, let's take a look at QQQ. Same deal, same deal, same options. 1 day till expiration Thursday, 9 days till expiration Friday. Okay, we like these Thursday, Friday because they got more open interest at the end of the week. All right, a lot of open interest. All right, we like open interest because it gives us more liquidity. More liquidity means tighter spreads. Tighter spreads means less slippage when you want to get in or get out. All right. Again, we like $5 to $10 out of the money. Again, the very best performing options is always going to be your 0 DTE in the money option. All right. But be careful with those. All right. When you've got candles that move, here's 449 down to 446. That's a $3 candle. If you had 10 in the money option, 0 DTE, all right, and you were on the wrong side of that, that would cost you $3,000 right there. All right, so that's why we don't trade the zeros very often. Okay, so there's QQQ 10-minute chart. All right, let's take a look at the daily chart, and we'll hit it up over here. Okay, just like everybody else, lower high, lower low, closing under the bearish cross, under the falling 17, and under the all-time high anchored VWAP, which belongs right there. Okay, down here in the lower third, so that's bearish on QQQ. You move up, you give it up, that's that's neutral. If you move up, you give it up, it's neutral. If you move down and you give it up, that's neutral. All right? So they're back into the lower third. All right? So that's bearish in the lower third right there. Okay, let's look at FNGA. Here's our big cap boys. Lower high, lower low, closing under the bearish cross. Under the falling 17, that's the red dots. That's the 17 EMA. Closing under the pink line, that's the all-time high anchored VWAP. Closing under the midpoint, that's the green dash line right there. It's the 50-yard line, half court, midfield, whatever you want to call it. All right? Right there. Closing in quadrant 1, that's bearish. All right? FNGA, quadrant 1, that's bearish. All right, let's take a look at IWM. It's a Russell 2000. Okay, Russell 2000, lower high, lower low, closing under a bearish trap, under the falling 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP, under the uptrend line. Down here, quadrant 1, that's bearish. Let's take a look at Diamond Dow. Diamond Dow, lower high, lower low, closing under bearish cross. Okay, closing under the midpoint. Okay, closing under the falling 17. Closing under the all-time high anchored VWAP, which is also under the uptrend line. All right, not in the lower third, so it's just neutral. All right, you go down, you give it up. Okay, that's neutral. You go up, you give it up. That's neutral. So they're not in the lower third, so they're just neutral. Let's take a look at our technicals, T2122. Let's move some of this stuff out of the way. All right, we look at it on the 15-minute chart, okay? And we can see from the 16th, okay, we're down here. Okay, we popped up into the buy zone. Bears wouldn't open the door. Came back, made a higher low. All right, gave them the middle finger, and they tossed us out. All right, then got a lower high, and then we got crushed right through. They didn't like that middle finger. All right, then they crushed us all the way down to the seller's chop zone. All right, from there we chopped around for the rest of the day inside the seller's chop zone. They don't like the middle finger. All right, so there's T2122. T2123. We have a comatose, flatline, cardiac arrest on the T2123. All right? This is a bear flag. If you don't know what a bear flag is, this is a bear flag. From the bigger perspective of price originates up here and then moves to the right. All right? That is a bear flag. All right, price action. I got to zoom in. Still caught underneath the falling 200 SMA. Again, all right, you linger here too long, and what happens is investors start to get nervous, all right? And when they start getting nervous, they sell things they really didn't want to sell because they're nervous, all right? So you come down, they're looking for a bounce. Ain't no bounce happening, okay? Ain't no higher highs happening. Ain't no bearish gaps getting filled. See the bearish gap right here? Never got filled. See the bearish gap? Not getting filled. See the falling 200? We're not challenging it, all right? We're comatose flat line right here, all right? So there's T2123, okay? No bounce happening. What we do have, and just a little mini bull flag, all right, with a fabric that's like 10 times as long as the flagpole inside a big bear flag right there. Okay? So, not even a glimpse of hope there. Not making any higher highs. Okay, so we're still bearish until we start making higher highs and start filling bearish gaps. Okay, if we're not filling bearish gaps, okay, and we're consolidating, okay, under prior consolidation, that's a bearish environment. All right? Prior consolidation. Prior consolidation. Okay? You see that? It's a bearish environment when we consolidate under prior consolidation. Again, bearish environment when we don't make higher highs and fill bearish gaps. Okay? Consolidation under consolidation. This is a bearish environment. We will look for the 10-minute downtrends under VWAP to have 4 successful trades. The market's in a downtrend. Okay? The downtrend trades are going to work probably much better than the counter trend uptrend trades with a 10-minute uptrend over VWAP. Okay? So there's T2123. We're bearish if you don't know it. Okay? We'll zoom out. See it? Okay? We're not making any higher highs here. Okay? See, there's the high. This is the all-time high. I can't even go back any further. Okay? All-time high. See how we went up? All right? Came back down, and we flatlined. What happens when you flatline is investors get spooked. Okay? And they give up, and they don't want to be the last one standing when the music stops. So they tend to, let me get rid of it now, okay? And then selling begets more selling, and hence now you got another wave down. The same thing may happen again, all right? If we linger here too much longer, selling may beget more selling. I think we saw some today. All right, so there's T2123. 15-minute chart. Let's take a look at the 3-bar chart. All right. Okay, that's the all-time high. See the V-bottom bounce? See the lack of V-bottom bounce. Okay. See the lower high. Bears get inspired. Make a lower low. All right. Lower high. Okay. See how we came down and we had a V-bottom. Okay, but we never made a higher high. We didn't even challenge the prior high. Okay, so what happens? We roll over, all right, and then no bounce, and then investors get spooked, and they dump everything that they had because they don't want to be the last one standing when the music stops. Here's price action. Again, selling begets more selling. All right, so it's price action underneath the falling 200 SMA. Okay, this is the all-time high anchored VWAP. These are two prior, not an all-time, this is a prior, this is the all-time high. There's no anchored VWAP here, all right? These are two prior all-time highs right there, okay? See, we're under all of that, okay? The outlook is bearish, all right? Still not filling any bearish gaps, still not making any higher highs, okay? See the flat line? The sucker's dead. All right, T2123. Let's take a look at FNGA. Okay, price action. Yes, we did have a glimpse of hope here with there's a high, a higher high, and a higher low. All right. And then we made another higher high, and then a higher low, and then here's a bearish gap, all right, from 5 days ago that never got filled. It have been 5 days, and we still couldn't fill this bearish gap. Okay, that's a clue. All right. The bulls are weak. If they can't fill the bearish gaps, they're weak. All right, and hence they didn't make a higher high. All right, failure to make a higher high, guess what? We're going to go check out the low again, all right? And here we are rolling over to check out the prior low. All right, so this price action got up over the falling 200. Failure to make the higher high right here and right here. They had to beat that high. This one had to beat this one. It couldn't do it, and we roll over. Again, we got the bearish gap that never got filled. All right, and now we're back down here checking out the lows. There's FNGA, all right, on the 15-minute chart. Let's go take a look at a few sectors. All right, I'm going to start off with XLE. XLE. Hey, a little bit different than the others, all right. If you remember, all right, only 5 minutes ago, the indexes were making lower highs and lower lows. XLE not doing the same thing, making a higher low and a higher high. A little bit different there, just to make a note of that. All right, closing inside a bearish trap as opposed to under a bearish trap like the other indexes. Okay, this is just the energy sector. Closing under the falling 17 EMA, that's the red dots. Closing under the 2 uptrend lines. All right, so here's downtrend lines. There's downtrend line 1, downtrend line 2. We're closing under it. We're closing under, see the pink line, under the all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay, it's a 12-month high anchored VWAP. Closing under the midpoint. Down here in quadrant 1, that's bearish. Okay, you move up, you give it up, that's neutral. But if you move up and you give it up and more, that's bearish. Okay, down here, quadrant 1, in a bear flag. All right, so there's XLE. All right, on the daily chart, in a downtrend because they're making lower lows. Okay, let's take a look at USO. USO, much like XLE. Higher low, higher high, closing over a bearish trap. See, the 3 is under the 8. That makes it a bearish trap. Okay, under the falling 17. Under, okay, that's a 3-year high anchored VWAP, post-COVID high there. Okay, all the way back in, see there, 2022, 3-year high. All right, under the falling 17, under the all-time high anchored VWAP. In the lower third, okay, so it's still bearish. All right, you move up. You give it up, that's neutral. You move up, you give it up and more, that's bearish. So they're bearish down here in the lower third. All right, so there's USO. Okay, they're currently in a downtrend, but guess what? They have not been moving down for the past 6 days. Okay, this is called a pullback in the downtrend. In order to negate the downtrend, they will have to take out this high up here, all right, in order to negate the downtrend. Either that, create a higher low and a lower high, and then come back and take out the lower high. So there's USOs. Take a look at UNG. UNG, lower high, lower low, closing under the bearish trap. See the yellow under the white. Under the falling 17, under the uptrend line, just over the 12-month high anchored VWAP. Okay, 12-month high anchored VWAP. More like 15-month high anchored VWAP. All right, so there's in a downtrend, all right, because here's a low, and we made a lower low. See the lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. So they're in a downtrend. Okay, they move up, they give it up, that's neutral. If they break into the lower third, that's going to be bearish. Right now, just neutral. Again, up over that 15-month high anchored VWAP. All right, so there's UNG, nat gas. Let's take a look at precious metals. GLD had an awesome day. GLD produces a new all-time high. All right, that's bullish as whatever, okay? There's no questioning about it. It's making new highs. It's bullish. It's up in quadrant 4. Okay, let's take a look at SLV. All right, look at SLV. All right, SLV was neutral when we started this morning. Okay, SLV, higher low, higher high, closing over a bullish trap. See, the 3 is now on top of the 8 as opposed to under it like in some of the other indexes. Okay, closing over the hooking 17. See how the price balls go from red to green. So closing over the hooking 17. Up here in the upper third of, all right? So that makes it bullish up there in the upper third. Okay, closing over. This is silver. That is a 12-year high anchored VWAP, and it also doubles as a 6-month high anchored VWAP. Okay, so there's the 6-month high, all right, 12-year high anchored VWAP, all right? In the upper third, that's bullish, all right? That's precious metals. Let's take a look at SMH. All right, SMH, all right, quadrant 1, that's going to be bearish. Lower high, lower low, closing under, bearish cross, under, falling 17, under, all-time high anchored VWAP, that's the pink line. All right, down here, quadrant 1, that's bearish, okay? Making lower highs, there's a high, that's a lower high, and lower lows, that's a downtrend. Okay, let's take a look at XLK. Okay, it's the sibling to SMH. Lower high, lower low, closing under the bearish cross, under the falling 17, that's the red dots, closing under the all-time high anchored VWAP, that's the pink line, closing in the lower third, that's bearish. All right, under the uptrend line, in the lower third, that's bearish. Let's take a look at XLF. XLF got a lower high, lower low, closing under the bearish cross, under the falling 17, that's the red dots right through here, closing under the all-time high anchored VWAP, that's the pink line, closing under the midpoint, all right? So they move up and they give it up, so that's neutral. They move down, see down here they would be bearish, and they give it up, that's neutral. So there's XLF. All right, just neutral and in a downtrend. Okay, in order to negate the downtrend, they'll have to take out this high up here to negate the downtrend. All right, so there's XLF, or actually this high right here. All right, so there's XLF. Let's take a look at IYT. So our transports, and we're going to call it a day. Lower high, lower low, closing under, bearish trap. Under, falling 17, under, all-time high anchored VWAP, that's the pink line. Closing under, midpoint, down here, in the lower third, okay, of the quadrant lines. Okay, that's bearish, down here, quadrant 1. Okay, see the low? They made a lower low. That's bearish. That's a downtrend. Okay, so you see, nothing's happening for the bulls yet. Okay, it's not time yet. All right, they gave you a little excitement with a 5-candle, 6-candle pullback in the downtrend, but it's not time yet. We need them to make higher highs. We need them to fill bearish gaps. All right, we need FNGA on our side. Okay, and it's not. It's not ready yet. Okay, it's not working. All right, we need T2123 on our side. It is in a flat line, all right? It's not making any higher highs. This isn't working. Nothing is working right now, okay? And it actually looks like if we linger in this state for too much longer, we may see another wave down, okay? Just, I don't want to be the doom and gloom guy, but I don't want you unprepared, Okay, so there's T2123. Back to the charts. Okay, so that's it. So a lot of traders. Alan, guess what? Alan today gets a Greedy Pig award. Okay, because Alan kicked some booty. All right, so Alan, roll up here. Alan did. Let me show you Alan. Okay, Alan traded. Look at what Alan traded. He traded some SPY puts, the 522s, and he bought and sold them. So he bought them, look, for $4.85 a share. Okay, because there's 100 shares to each contract. All right, look how fast that was. Dang, that was fast. All right, so he did that inside of, oh gosh, that's pretty fast. Trying to think that. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. He went from 485 to 565. Nice work, Alan. All right. So, and Alan got 6.5%. Since prior close, he increased his account by 6.5%. All right. Nice work, Alan. Way to go. All right. What did I trade? I traded, what did I trade? Let's see what I traded. Okay, I traded some. I had a hedge on from last night. All right, because I had some calls. All right, so I put a hedge on and I captured, I closed out my hedge at the bottom and captured 30,000 from that. And then I bought some puts, kind of like Alan. I didn't do the 522s. I went a little further out of the money. And in time, I went with the 500s and the 9. I made 14K on that and almost 7K there. Call it 6K on some 1 DTE 500 puts. Made 6,000 there. And I lost some on some 550 calls because I tried to double down on those when price was moving up. Lost 9,000 right there. I really didn't lose 9,000. All right, because if I could show you what really happened, I'd have to go here. Okay. And I really didn't lose 9,000, and I'm going to show you why. Because I bought right here 100 contracts at 445. Now, the ones that I sold, look, I sold of those 100. I didn't sell them all. I mean, I sold all 100, all right? But I had a previous open position, all right? So, from the cost basis perspective, they coming in as a loss. But from my eyes, all right, I still got 16 days to fix this, okay? So, from my eyes, I bought them for 445, sold them for 460, 465, 470, 475, 481, 485, 490, 495, $5, 497, 498, 499. Okay? And where would I leave? 499, 501, 498, 497, right there. So I sold all 100, all right, for way more, for more than what I purchased them for. Okay, so in my eyes, even though it shows up as a loss, I don't get all twisted about it, all right, because I know I made money on those, and I still got 16 days left to fix this position, so I'm not worried about it. As a matter of fact, with the bearish outlook that I saw, guess what? I put the hedge on again. So I sold 60, making covered calls, all right? Here's the calls. I did covered calls on those, okay? Call it a debit spread instead of a credit spread. So I sold 60 against my 83, all right, for the overnight, and then I'll add more later on to create a back ratio spread or whatever I decide to do with it, all right? So there it is, right there. So that's how I wound up with the 30,000. That was my hedge that I put on in case price dropped yesterday. I didn't want my calls to get crushed. And as you can see, they did get crushed. Good thing I had on a covered call position. Okay? All right, traders, that is it for me for today. All right, I want to say y'all had a great day. Thanks for hanging out with me. All right, Robert, we're always here for you. Very sorry to hear about your dad. Just know that we're all in here and we all support you, and we look forward to when it's all over. Hey, Stu, all right? Much better day today, right? Much better than yesterday. All right, thanks, everyone. All right, we will see you all tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and we'll do it again. All right? It's my family here. All right? Oh, I wanted to show you guys this, okay? This is kind of cool. I created it. All right? This is really cool. All right, here we go. Okay? Coming up. Okay, can you guess which one of these is the BYOB member? Okay, because one of these sheep is a BYOB member. Okay, can you spot the BYOB member? He's the one that looks content, probably well fed. All right? Yep, he'd be the wolf in sheep's clothing. Okay? Okay, he'll be the one that looks content and well fed because he knows exactly where he's going to find his next meal. Right? All right, traders, everybody have a great night after those laughs. All right? See you tomorrow.